IndyCar returns to virtual Canada, but we're a 5.5 hour drive up the 401 from where IndyCar usually sets up shop. Welcome to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It's a track more known for the crazy F1 races it's produced, but today the IndyCars take to a track that CART last raced at 14 years ago, with all the drivers hoping to avoid becoming the latest victim of the infamous Wall of Champions. Those walls are ever present and unforgiving around this 4.31 kilometer circuit, and for 53 laps, we're going to see about 25 drivers pushing the limit, hoping to be the last in the wall and the first to the checkered flag. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, and as ever, I'm joined by Sumal Aurora. And Sumal, we're back for the rest of the season here on the iRacing Esports Network. How excited are you to continue doing these broadcasts here?
I simply cannot wait for them. I mean, the first half of the season was absolutely incredible. We saw so many good races, especially at the road courses. And here with a track like the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, I am pretty sure that this is going to be quite an entertaining one.
Entertaining indeed. And there you can see the weather. It's a fairly warm one. Track temperature is 42 and it's a gusty day, 20 kilometer hour winds. And Sumo, the practice session before was a fair bit cooler. How do you expect those warmer track temperatures are going to challenge the drivers here?
Quite a bit actually, because now if drivers don't really have a lot of experience in driving in warmer temperatures, what can really happen is their tires can just lose all sorts of grip. So you can see them slipping and sliding around over there and not really getting the ideal lap time. So adapting to the temperatures certainly is going to be one challenge that the drivers must overcome.
Yeah, and we're currently in qualifying right now and just winding our way down. 3 minutes left in the session, but right now you see the gap on the left-hand side of your screen. It's Matt Farrow, the Team Redline driver, who's jumping into the car for the first time this series. 9,000 iRating Sumal, and currently on pole by 1.2 seconds.
Wow, that is a properly dominating qualifying over there by Matt Farrow right there. 1.2 seconds. In the world of motorsport, that is literally a century. So for the other guys, here is a proper statement by Farrow coming in for this particular race and just setting the timing screens alight. So can the series regulars like Usher, Manzaro, Soranzo challenge them? Challenge for Farrow, I'm sorry. But, wow, the gap has closed down because Manzaro's put in a good lap time, but he's still around a second behind Farrow. So, clearly, that is a magical performance right there.
Yeah, and Montreal, not one of the regular, stops on the IndyCar schedule, Sumo, and it's, encourage a few more participants this week. Mark Usher jumps in and out of the series. He's currently in third. You also have David Toth, who's jumped in, and another driver above that 5,000 iRating mark. So we've got what I thought would be an interesting three-way fight, but Matt Farrow, seemingly Sumo, that qualifying pace, hopefully he can translate it into a race pace from his point of view, because he'll just be able to pull away from the rest of the field.
Absolutely. What a dominating lap that is by Matt Farrow right there. But the thing is, it's quite tricky to try and translate your qualifying pace into a race pace here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, especially considering that the walls around here are never too far off. So you can go in for a hot lap here in qualifying and try and make sure that everything works out for you. But in the race, the walls are ever so close when you try and push so hard consistently. So for Matt Farrow, it's going to be a tricky task, but again, his pace has just been absolutely immaculate.
And we jump on board with the Canadian Andrew Kinsella. He drives for Powerslide Motorsports, and he took the win, Sumal, at Road America in a strategy-dominated race. He obviously made that fuel-saving work very effectively, currently down in 7th place and 1.6 seconds behind. We can quickly touch on the strategy here, Sumal. It's about an 18 or 19 lap fuel window, and with a 53 lap race, we're basically just looking at a 2-stop guaranteed for all of the drivers.
Pretty much so, yeah. Unless, of course, you try and go for something different and try and have really quick stints for 3 stops. But I really doubt that something like that may really work out here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Again, drivers will have to be a bit proactive with their fuel saving, because there are certain corners here where you can actually lift off and coast a little bit and try and save a lot of fuel. But it's all about that trade-off between lifting and actually going for a pit stop, because if you actually conserve a lot of fuel, your pit stops will be slightly shorter, so you'll be wasting less time over there. As we see Kinsella slamming hard, we must speak about the Wall of Champions here, Arjuna, because a lot of people, apart from the wall itself, the AstroTurf around the outside, if you just get too excited right there with the throttle, you can see accidents like that quite often. And Kinsella, who's by no means a slow driver, certainly getting a taste of that early on.
Yeah, definitely. We got a brief just taste there, not hitting the Wall of Champions, but just getting caught out by Champions Corner in general, and that might be a theme of the race and throughout indeed. And why don't we go ahead, as the clock just ticks off, qualifying is over. It's time to go ahead and take a look at the grid for this race. As the field forms on the back straight, there comes the field up on your screen. It's Matt Farrow, a 1:20.180, a pole position here by a full second over one of the championship contenders, David Soranzo. Then you also have Cesar Manzado right behind him. Mark Usher, he's going to be about 1.5 seconds behind. That rounds out row number 2 on the grid. Moving further back, it's David Toth. Lining up next to him is going to be Andreas Eick. And then on row 4, it's Andrew Kinsella and Erka Lindström.
Then, of course, we have Danielle Noventa in P9, but Charles Anti in 10th. Mark Johnston joins us here in P11. And Daniel Manzano is here in P12 today, from Brazil, of course. Andrew Wood is here in P13, with George Whitmar starting this particular one in P14. Janos Moros, he is in P15, with Connie Naslund, I think a fresh driver for this particular race. He is in P16, Arjuna.
Yeah, and the rest of the drivers just going to be scrolling through on your screen right now. John Downing, Richard Craig, Karsten Brody, Julian Abro, Vincent Wall, and Stefan Walder. And then a few drivers towards the back of your field who didn't set times, but the total spread of your field is about 4 seconds here. So there's a big pace delta among 25 cars, Sumo.
There really is, but the thing is, that qualifying gap that we saw right there at the top, it may not really translate into a good race for Matt Farah. I mean, I'm not cursing him or anything, but for him to convert it into a good race will involve lots of things. I mean, in qualifying, you can just not really consider about fuel saving or the walls, anything like that. You can just go in for a very, very hard lap and try and extract the maximum performance from your car. But in the race, lots of factors to be considered. Traffic here will be a major factor as well, considering it's a slightly longer one. So for Matt Farah, that lap pace that we saw over there may not necessarily give him the win. But that said, it does give him quite a significant advantage over the others.
And we'll see exactly how this race is going to start off. The field just pulling away now down that back straightaway, down the casino straight. And the pace truck's going to pull off and leave the field in control of the Team Redline driver, Matt Farah and Sumo. You know, you quickly just touched on it, but also traffic and strategy is going to be a big thing here. Given that pace delta, those varying strategies that might emerge can also be just offset by lap traffic that's going to come into play. But as they go through the Champions Corner, everyone's just giving each other plenty of space indeed, and they'll approach the start-finish line, just reform up further back. But there we go, Matt Farah with a nice jump, and he's going to pull away, and straight away, actually, Mark Usher is going to get challenged there for that third position, but they're single filing it out and down into turn one, and so far, everyone's been able to get through safely. You can see there, 2x2 further back, but out front, Sumo, Matt Farah with a very strong start.
Yes, indeed. He just maintains the sort of pace that he can from qualifying, and he's doing quite a good job at the top. The drivers rather smartly going single file at this stage, but I'm pretty sure they will go on the aggressive rather soon, because at this circuit, track position matters quite a bit. Over here, we see a few moves being attempted as such, but the drivers still pretty respectful with each other. I'm just wondering about when they'll actually go for a move, and that hairpin coming up, Arjuna, could be a place over here for P2.
And Mark Usher's already putting the pressure now on David Soranzo in front of him. He knows that if he lets Matt Farah pull away here, that might be the end of the challenge for the race lead. There's been some action further back. Daniel Noventa has had an incident. We'll try and get a replay further up in a few laps' time, but right now around the hairpin for the first time, no moves being made at the front of your field. Further back, though, they got a little bit stacked up. Andrew Kinsella had to just go a little bit wide. But so far, everyone with no damage. You can see that. And now Andrew Kinsella really on the back of these two cars in front of him.
And Kinsella surely knows how to drive a car around here at Montreal. He certainly has done quite a few races at this track with these Indy cars, uses the draft and gets the move done before the chicane. And that's something that you want to do, because in this particular final chicane, you just don't want to be going side by side with any other car. It is just a race kill as such. You can either miss up your lap, you can go wide on the exit of chicane and go pass it on off, or worse off, you can be into the wall. And that is a place that lots of champions over the years have seen and have been to. And that is the easiest way to end your race over here at Montreal.
Yeah, and that was Kinsella getting past David Toth, so Kinsella's in 7th place. So there's been some action on the first lap. Sumo will go ahead now, and we'll try and get a replay of that incident with Daniel Noventa. And here it comes on your screen. You can see it's coming down in towards that second chicane, and the number 15 machine going to get a little bit of a helping hand from the curbs. We'll grab another replay on screen soon, but the curbs here can be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, the curbs here are Formula 1 level stuff. They are properly high and just made to punish all the drivers for trying to go outside. And Noventa, unfortunately, learning that the hard way. And the amount of damage that they can cause to your suspensions over here is just incredible. Noventa getting too much of it. And once again, those curbs are simply unforgiving. Not only will they shatter your suspension, but they will also turn you wide and make you a passenger in your very own car.
Indeed, and we jump back now to the battle for the lead, because as we finish the second lap of this race, we go through Champions Corner once again. Mark Usher not really being able to close too much more, and the gap out front is slowly just extending, because Matt Farah with another very fast lap. You can see the gap, Subal, is about 2 seconds already.
Matt Farah is just doing an Ayrton Senna at this stage. I mean, back in the day, Ayrton Senna used to come in qualifying and used to set a magical lap time, but that was way, way faster than anyone else. And in the race, he just used to take the gap and dominate from the others. And Matt Farah so far just seems to be doing exactly that. 2 seconds the gap already within 3 laps gone. Farah certainly is laying the gauntlet down, as we see a few moves being made over the side here, Arjuna.
Yeah, and Andrew Kinsella is now up into 6th place. He's moved Erka Lindstrom down 1 more spot, so Kinsella up in 6th. Now David Toth looking to get in on the action, and he goes towards the inside. This is down in towards turns 8 and 9. He's going to try and go. He's going to get the move done on the inside, but he gets a little bit too wide, and you can see him hop the curb there. But fortunately for him, able to keep that momentum. The gap, though, to Kinsella has really just formed up a little bit more.
It's just so easy to overshoot your braking points and to get on the curves, because when you're in the heat of a battle, you just want to get the extra bit on the other guy. As we see, wow, that is Antti just going slightly wide over there for a second. And I was just saying, in your braking points, when actually in the heat of a battle, you just want to get that extra bit on the other guy. So you try and brake as late as possible, and the consequence of that could be yourself on the curbs. We see a replay of what's happening at the hairpin. Oh my goodness, a bit of touching over there.
Yeah, it was just a little bit of getting checked up in towards the hairpin and a few cars making contact, and unfortunately I think some damage has been done to a few cars. So now we jump back to the battle. You can see how spread out it's become here, but you jump back to the front and we can see Mark Usher continuing to put on the pressure, because despite the fact that Matt Farrow is running away, Sumo, Mark Usher, he's just being held up here almost by David Soranzo. He's unable to find a way past.
Yes, indeed, and that can be such a major problem. You may have the pace advantage, but at a circuit like Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, passing opportunities can be slightly rare to come by, so you have to make things happen for yourself so that you can actually exploit all the pace advantage that you've got. Look at him, he's just trying to run over all the curves, trying to be as aggressive as possible. He isn't really looking forward to making a move right now at the hairpin, but it surely will be on the cards coming into the chicane.
And so far, he's not used any of his push-to-passes, so he's just saving them up and just trying to see what's going to happen. We'll jump over to your leader, though, and there you can see on the steering wheel, the third box from the left, Matt Farrow's already used 2 of his 10 push-to-passes, so just trying to extend the gap. And sometimes, Sumo, that's what you need. It's almost like an F1 where you're just trying to get out of the DRS range in the first few laps. In this case, Matt's just trying to pull away and just trying to give himself a little bit of a buffer in many ways.
Absolutely, but the thing with the push to pass is if you use a bit too much of it already, it may actually backfire later on when you have another car right on your tail trying to get the position that you actually have. So yeah, push to pass, another strategic element to consider, and if you don't really use it wisely, it could just be your Achilles heel throughout the race. Your pace may be fantastic, but the one push to pass error, it can cost you dearly.
Yeah, and someone who I think has just become the latest victim of the Wall of Champions, Andrew Z. Wood. Will get the replay up here, and Team Talent Driver as he goes through that last chicane. Oh, it's almost a mirror incident of what happened to Kinsella there, Sumo. He just lost the rear end and hard into the inside wall.
That can happen so many times. Wood, just misjudging it, getting on the throttle a bit too eagerly. And we see him just head to the wall over there. Again, these Indy cars, 700 horsepower. So you've got a lot of power in your right foot, but with great power comes great responsibility. And Wood certainly misjudging that, getting a bit too eager, a bit too excited in that Team Talent car. As we take another replay. Good entry for the curves, but the exit, oh, it can just go so horribly wrong. And the damage is evident.
Yeah, and something just happened actually as well, because Mark Usher, jump back to him, you can see him being hounded now by Andreas Eich in 4th position. He's had a slip up, Sumo. He's now down into 4th, and we were talking before this race, and I told you this, Mark Usher can be very, very quick in any open wheel car, but also can be a slight bit inconsistent. Have we just seen one of those mistakes creep in for one of the drivers from the UK?
Quite possibly, and if you have those mistakes early on, it's slightly better, because then you have a lot of time later on in the race to try and cover things up. But knowing the margins for error in this championship, knowing how fiercely contestable this is, you don't even want to be making those errors of sorts, because all the other drivers, they will pounce, they will capitalize on every single mistake you make. So being very cautious over here with your mistakes is going to be critical, and yeah, perhaps that mistake can cost him dearly later on. Oh boy, Wall of Champions claiming a few victims right there. Not on the wall though, but the curbs are claiming quite a few people here, Arjuna.
Yeah, and we'll get a replay now up on the onboard of Cesar Manzado, because he had to avoid Mark Usher as he spun in front of him. And here you can see just coming through Cesar, going very cautiously, but Mark locking up the tires in front of him. And Sumo, that was very fortunate indeed.
I wonder how he just kept it on track. We now taken onboard with Manzato, just bouncing off those curbs, and now we see the crash right ahead of him. Oh boy, that went rather tricky.
Yeah, and we're just having some technical issues with the feed right now, so Sumo's a little bit delayed on his stuff, but Cesar Manzado, he's up into 3rd place, and he's got now Mark Usher about 1.5 seconds behind, and it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to play out, Sumo. we've still got a long way to go, and it's now 6 seconds separating the top two. And Matt Farah, we talked about the red line driver, 9,000 I rating. Well, he's not just strong in an LMP1 car, he's showing that put him in an IndyCar as well, and he can be just as quick.
Absolutely, in the timing screen right now, it shows a gap of around 6 seconds between Matt Farah and David Soranzo. Considering how many laps have passed, that is virtually around, what, a second a lap or something like that. He's just been fantastic at this stage. So Matt Farah, he certainly has proven that the I rating system is quite decent.
Yeah, and you know, I was fairly surprised to see one of the red line drivers coming into the series, especially given Sumo what's happening this weekend. We can briefly just touch on it as we look back to battles happening further back in your field. It's Andrew Kinsella who's being pressured by David Toth, who's managed to get past Urkel Lindstrom, but obviously this weekend, Sumo, the Spa 24 hours powered by VCO, and once again Radio Le Mans and RaceSpot TV partnering to bring 24-hour uninterrupted coverage of the event.
Indeed, the virtual racing is just kicking off even more so right here. We've seen so many endurance races go past at 24 hours of Le Mans and the likes, but the Spa 24, it's just the ultimate GT3 endurance racing. We're going to have it tomorrow. Make sure that you're here on the iRacing Esports Network to watch it, because it is just going to be such a treat. GT3 action over 24 hours. Every single time I've watched Spa 24, it's just been entertaining.
Indeed, and we saw an incident, or the tail end of the incident there, involving Stefan Walter, one of the German sim racing streamers, who enjoys this car very much so, and is coming down into the hairpin here, and we'll see exactly what's happening. Oh, and he just loses it under the brakes, gets a little bit too deep himself, and fortunately, Sumo, he was able to gather it up and avoid plowing into one of the cars in front.
That could have just ended so much worse for him. Again, when you're in the heat of a battle, you can just misjudge your braking point so easily, and if you do that at the hairpin, you're quite possibly going to run into another car. So thankfully for Stefan, he just avoided another driver right here, because had he not, a heavy penalty would be slapped onto his times.
And the other driver did a very good job by the same token to just see the car coming in the mirror and get out of the way, and sometimes that's all you can do. But we jump back to live pictures and aerial coverage, as always, presented to you by Android Design, graphics partner of RaceSpot TV, and it's Andrew Kinsella. He's up into 6th place, and he's challenged by David Toth behind, and it'll be interesting to see. Sumo, you just noticed Andrew Wood, he's disconnected from the race, so that incident, seemingly terminal damage.
Yeah, so for Andrew Wood, just really not ending well for him. I mean, we know for a fact that he's quite a quick and pacey driver, but that incident over there, it can just frustrate the best of the best, and the damage that we saw on his car, that was mighty big. So again, hard for him to recover, and in this particular race, I don't really see it was really possible for him to recover quite quickly, considering how small it is in comparison to the other ones, and just the amount of damage he had, because he would be spending too much time on the pit lane, and recovering from that is just going to be next to impossible.
And we haven't really talked too much about the championship picture in this one, and that's because two of the contenders are not even in the session itself. So Hugo Olsen, the Swede who was leading coming into this week, not participating in this race, and Adam Crane, he was in our YouTube chat just a while ago at the start of this one. Unfortunately, PC hardware issues precluding him from registering for this one, and I know he won the race on Wednesday, but this is an opportunity, Sumo. You have drivers 9,000 I rating, 6,000 I rating. You know, this would be an opportunity for someone like Adam to just get some really solid points on the board. And as a result, that's going to be a big disappointment.
Indeed, I mean, you can learn a lot from the other drivers here as well. I mean, especially when you've got drivers with a better I rating. Maybe at times, you know, you can just follow around them in practice and try and learn what they're exactly doing. So, apart from the big opportunity for scoring points, there really is a lot that you can take back in terms of your driving right here. So, quite disappointing. Again, it's the sim racing equivalent of trying to have a hardware issue on your car, say, like a spring breaking off or a damper, or maybe even the engine. So, for those who thought that hardware issues don't really happen in sim racing and that's something that you can dodge off, think again. We have all sorts of problems here as well.
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be the 1-year anniversary of the Spa 24, where last year, obviously, Sumo, in a very dramatic final hour of the race, Max Verstappen's brake pedal fell apart, and one of the other drivers had to jump in front of Andrew Kinsella. Andreas Eich making a chicane through the first a little part of the lap and going down into turns 8 and 9. Kinsella's going to look to the inside here. He's going to get the move done. So Team Talent now down further position. And Andrew Kinsella, Sumo, he's been just making his way through the field very clinically.
after a rather dismal qualifying for him, he's just trying to carve up the order right here, and Kinsella just certainly seems to have all the motivation in the world on his mind. And I don't know whether it's a setup thing or just his raw pace, but Kinsella has just been on the move and making up 2 positions as well right here within the space of 10 laps is quite impressive. But we have to speak about Craig Arjuna. 6 positions in 10 laps. That is mighty impressive right there.
Yeah, and Craig's actually in a good battle as well with Connie Naslund in front as well, so he's trying to get one more spot if he can do that. But we stick with this battle here because David Toth now is putting the pressure on Andreas Eichen. The Team Talent car seemingly slipping back a little bit, and we've already had one Team Talent car having issues as Andrew Kinsella going very wide around turn number 1, and that actually checks up all of this battle pack, and to the inside, David Toth with a look, but Andreas is actually going to get out of the way there. A very bizarre incident there in Sumal. I think Andreas just said, you know what? I think it's time I get out of this battle.
Yeah, I mean, he was just unusually gentlemanlike in this sort of situation. He said, no, after you, sir. And I don't know exactly why he did that. As we take a look at this replay that's coming in, he just let him pass. I mean, he just said, no, the position's all yours. I'm not going to fight for this one. You can have it all for yourself. And I don't know whether he realized that he would just be losing too much time fighting, and perhaps he could just sit back and make the advantage of the clean air. I have no clue about that. I'm still trying to get my head around it. It's rather bizarre, this one.
Yeah, well, from the aerial shot, it actually looked as though for a second David just tried to get out of the way a little bit and, make slot back into line, but unfortunately a little bit too close, and Andreas feeling a little bit too pressured, deciding to just break a little bit deep, and you can see now that the gaps have slowly formed up here. Let's take this opportunity then to just jump back to your leader, because there was a moment a few laps ago, Sumal, where that gap came down, and I'm hoping the graphics is going to show it. In fact, it's not, because there you can see, you only see the 0.7 of a second increase, but just a few laps ago, Sumal, that gap had dropped from about 6.5 to 4 seconds, so Matt is not having it easy. This track really demands all of your focus, and that red line car, it looks great, and it's great to see it in this series, and right now 9,000 I rating, really putting on a show.
He really is, and as you rightly mentioned, this particular track, your concentration levels, I'm going to quote Julian Pava over here. At a street circuit, you just need to be super aware, and the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, on the face of it, it may appear that it has a bit more runoff in terms of the grass here and there, but mind you, the walls over here are never too far off. You make a mistake, and all of a sudden, like Robert Kubica back in 2007, you can just be taking a one-way trip to the barriers with your car completely being totaled off. So again, concentration levels must be at an all-time high right here. Oh, battle going on, Arjuna. Kinsella involved.
It's David Toth and Andrew Kinsella. David looking to the inside in the chicane, and Andrew Kinsella going to get a bit loose on the exit, trying to get the power down. And as a result, he's now in the slipstream. He's not on the push to pass, as you can see right now, but getting a healthy dose of that draft. He's pulling alongside, and side by side into the chicane doesn't work out, and Kinsella's going to get the place back, Sumal. Sometimes that can just happen. If you get past into the chicane, you can just make the move work back down into the... if you get the move done in the hairpin, you get the move back in the chicane.
It's a mighty long straight, that one, especially when you've got the things like draft and push to pass by your side. It can really work in your favor, and that can make sure that you get a move done at the chicane. But again, one overtaking opportunity leads to the other, because after the chicane, you have turn 1. But if you have a good exit off the chicane, Toth gets a big moment there. Oh boy.
That was a big moment, and at the same time, Subal, almost identically, I have just been told by my timing screen that John Downing, as we jump back to him, has had his own issue. Let's get that up on screen, but that was a big save from David. And we'll see this incident for John. It's coming through the Wall of Champions. I have a feeling it's coming towards the Wall of Champions. I have a feeling we might know exactly what happens here. We've seen it a few times before. And in fact, he actually gets...
the curbs.
In fact, it was the inside curve there, and the 24 car of Charles Ante had to really slow up hard, and the 22 behind him as well.
Exactly. I mean, at that particular chicane, it's not only the wall on the exit or the curbs on the middle or something like that. It is every single part of that corner that makes it so tricky. As we see Downing losing a couple of positions here and there, but wow, that inside curve as well, if you just get your entry wrong, those sausage curves will just make it their task to punish you in every way possible. And for John Downing, that is exactly what happened. And as I was saying, I've just been cut short once again because Robin Glenix has had an incident now.
Yeah, it's all happening on track. Subal, we barely have time to get our thoughts out, but it was coming down in towards turn number 6. Actually, it's going to be coming through turn 7, so getting a little bit too much curb, Sumo. He's able to actually gather it up and then loses it again on power. Let's try and grab another replay of that one. Again, another driver just being caught out by the technical difficulty of this track.
He's not really the first person to be caught on at that particular chicane, is he? Sebastian Vettel back in 2011. He just spun out a bit earlier on, but Glennick's on the exit getting it all wrong and getting the power down rather inconsistently. Now speaking about the circuit and its characteristics, because if you get a move done at the hairpin, it can be possible that someone counters you back at the chicane. And if you get a move done at the chicane, it's quite possible that you can get a counter back on at turn 1. So one overtaking opportunity at this circuit just blends into another one. So quite a few places where you can have a good battle going on, and your exits are critical over here, especially at the chicane, because if you don't really have a good exit and a good entry as well, because this particular corner is just so challenging, you can just be literally a sitting duck in comparison to the other car who can just swallow you up and get a move down into the multiple overtaking opportunities that we have over here in the final sector and the first one too. So for the drivers, their driving styles need to be adapted to all the overtaking opportunities right here.
Yeah, and you could just see from those pictures the gap that has developed between Matt Farah and David Soranzo. It's up to about 8.5 seconds, but battle for P2, it's still close. As Armanzado is keeping the Frenchman honest right now. And Mark Usher, interestingly, Sumo, you could see at the back of the shot, he just got held up by the lapped car a little bit. He's been unable to reel in the gap since his own mistake as we start to head towards the pit window at lap 15, and we talked about it briefly at the start, Sumo, talking between 18 and 19 laps, depending on how much fuel saving some of these drivers decide to do.
Exactly, and what I'm really interested to see is when Matt Farah rolls the dice, because he's been the comprehensive leader so far. The gap, according to the timing screen, are currently approximately 9 seconds right now, so the others will be keeping a keen eye on what he does, and it's quite likely that they just follow suit and try and get something done. Now, normally in the speedway race, the drivers try and get into the pit lane when there's a yellow flag, because we normally expect so much carnage, but at a road course like this one, the kind of cautions are a bit lower on, so the drivers have to make a lot of green flag pit stops. So when a caution actually comes in, and when we have a major crash like that, it can just change the complexions of this race altogether. So again, lots of factors to consider, but Matt Farah doing quite a good job as we now approach lap 16 with the pit stops fast and coming here.
Yeah, pit stops approaching. A few of the cars who have had incidents have just come down the pit lane, but jump back to the battle between Andrew Kinsella and David Toth. It is for 5th on track, and two drivers who potentially had a little bit of a more disappointing qualifying performance, but right now a fairly steady race pace, and unfortunately, Sumo, Andrew unable really to pull any type of strategy games like he was at the last road course at Road America, but you know, still to be here in 5th, and everyone in front of him is some of the stronger drivers in this series. Be fairly happy with the results so far. Still a long way to go though.
A long way to go indeed, and I wonder what Kinsella may have done to his tyres, because he's been fairly aggressive since this race has begun. If he's just been a little too aggressive, his tyres may be chipped off quite a bit more, and he may have used a little bit more fuel. So in the pit stops, he could be spending a little bit more time than he actually should be, and that can just put him on the back foot in comparison to the cars right ahead of him. He certainly has the pace, so he's currently driving in P5, but if he wants to close the gap back up, he needs to have the perfect balance in terms of raw pace and actually conserving a fuel and tyres enough as well, because it is so easy to lose enough amount of time in the pit stops as well.
It is, and that pit entry, it's fairly challenging, Sumo. You come in at full speed, and you know, any issue on the brakes, you could not only potentially get a speeding penalty, but I mean, we've seen it in the past as well. Potential miscommunications with other cars trying to then, you know, take the normal racing line. There's a lot of danger in the pit entry here.
Exactly, and especially if the other car doesn't really know that you're going into the pit lane, he could be just following you right behind, and all of a sudden you dive down straight and they're like, oh my goodness, what's happening right here? It could lead to them being disoriented and missing out on their own braking points. So now we normally know drivers, when they follow another car in the heat of a battle, they do tend to keep a keen eye on the other car right in front of them to try and make sure that their braking points can be replicated so that they can close them in a little bit too much. But with that particular pit entry over here at Montreal, you can just be disoriented so easily because the other car, it doesn't brake, it just goes straight on. So for you, you just have to make sure that your focus is clearly on the apex of the curb, because if you don't really do that, you can clearly miss up your braking points. And we know with that chicane, if something like that happens, the curbs could just take you on a one-way ticket to the barriers, and that really is not what you want to be doing right here.
Absolutely, and we watch these drivers take the chicane, the hairpin once again, and And just looking at the gap out front, it's officially over 10 seconds right now. So Team Redline, Matt Farrow having a very strong performance here. David Saranzo in that championship hunt. He's still having a fairly strong performance here. Two of the championship contenders, Hugo Olsen and Adam Crane, unable to make it for this race. And what is going to be a fairly high paying points race for many of the drivers. Now you have to remember, for some of our new drivers to sim racing, and iRacing specifically, the iRacing points are determined based on the relative strength of field. And so when you have drivers like Matt Farrow, David Toth, and Mark Usher, the top 3 cars in terms of iRating in this race, all coming in for a unique one-off, or, you know, in Mark's case, an occasional appearance, that point number going to be increased. And David Saranzo in second and Cesar Manzado in third. Sumil in a very, very strong position as they get towards the pit stop phase. And you just noticed Matt Farrow has gone purple, signifying potentially this will be one of his in-laps.
It really will be. He's just trying to maximize the lap times right here so that he can just get enough of a buffer in comparison to the pit stops when the other guys actually come in. So Matt Farrow certainly raising the bar in every single way possible, as you rightly mentioned about the points right there as well. So for all the other guys, it's a major learning experience and also a big chance to try and make sure that they score enough points. Just look at the way Matt Farrow has been driving. Absolutely pinpoint. He's been very aggressive as well. He's trying to ride up the curbs a little bit, but not too much to make sure that his car isn't damaged at all. So his lap times have just been absolutely perfect. 19 laps in his stint, and I have a feeling that he will be coming in rather soon. So keep a keen eye on him and just the way he drives. It is just perfect textbook as we see a few cars coming into the pit lane, Arjuna.
Yeah, so we've got quite a few takers onto pit lane right now. David Saranzo, Mark Usher, Andrew Kinsella, Andreas Eich and Erkel Lindstrom all in that shot right there. And David Saranzo makes his way into his own box. The two other drivers who joined Matt Farrow on sticking one more lap on track was Cesar Manzado and David Toth. So potentially here it's going to be interesting to see. There's two battles that are going to play out. Obviously Cesar Manzado and David Saranzo battling for second. And we also had David Toth and Andrew Kinsella. And that was a very close pit exit for David Saranzo there. He almost got chopped up by a lapped car.
Oh boy, that is the challenge of Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. When you come back out, there are so many cars on the track, and it's such a tightly compressed circuit, this one, that it is so easy to lose so much time on the exit. We take a look at the replay once again. Here he comes, he gets out of the box. Saranzo and Arjuna, take us through what happened really here.
Yeah, we'll see it here. He's just making his way back onto the track right now. And there you can see it's a car who hasn't come down into pit lane yet. And there was almost a merger. And that other car actually spun. So we're not going to be able to show you that one. But the car behind Sumil, you talked about the difficulty on... We talked about the difficulty of pit entry, but pit exit as well. And one of the people fighting in the front of your field has been caught out. And as the rest of the leaders now dive onto the pit lane, we'll get to see exactly how that plays out.
I really love the pit exit over here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve because it just throws you in the heat of the battle. It's on the exit of turn 1 and 2, and all of a sudden there's a short run down to the chicane coming up over there. So all the other cars be having a good run, and all of a sudden when you exit in the pit lane, you find yourself in the heat of a battle. And Matt Farrow comes out, he seems to be in rather clean air, but this pit exit right here, it can just breed so many battles, and Manzado goes back out again as well.
Yeah, and we'll see how close it is here on the exit. In fact, there goes David Saranzo, so it's not that close, but the gap has closed up a little bit further behind. If we jump to a camera there, you'll see David Saranzo making his way around the lapped car, and Mark Usher is in much closer proximity than he was before. If we jump back to the battle for fifth as well, here comes Andrew Kinsella and David Toth. That gap not really changed too much, Sumo. The pit strategy playing a little bit of a factor here.
It's actually quite a significant factor right now. I mean, if the drivers don't really manage out their fuel and tires properly, they will be ending up with a rather disadvantaged position later on in this race, which can favor the other drivers as such. Kinsella right now doing quite a decent job. He's been chased at the back right there, but wow, it's turning out to be a good race, Arjuna, as we see yet another battle on our screen now.
And that's a lapped car, I do believe, that is holding up what is a battle for second and third. And there was some contact there, I believe. Mark Usher had to just get out of the way a little bit, force that lapped car out of the way. And now it's a drag race down towards the chicane, the final stretch. But you can see the gap to that second place car, Sumo. It was not that big going out of turn number 1. And as Mark Usher looks to the outside, he's not going to really have much to do there. They're going to go side by side, but nothing really doing. In fact, because Mark Usher really got checked up hard in the lapped car looking in as well. And now comes Andrew Kinsella and David Toth.
Here he comes. Usher tries to make a move over here. Oh, look at the Kinsella trying to go around the outside. Oh, Usher making a move down the inside though. Gets the cut back. And what a good move that is by Usher. Textbook move at turn 1.
Yeah, there was a lot happening on track though. We'll try and grab a replay in just a little bit, but the action isn't stopped on track now because Cesar Manzardo, who's lost that podium spot, and now he's got 2 cars all over him. It's all kicked off right after the pit stops, and right now, it's all happening really, this battle for third backwards because Matt Farrow, it's a 14-second lead, and Sumo, sorry, I just heard a car crashing in the background. Oh, that was the lapped car. Julian Abro around.
Oh boy, here we go again. We've seen lap cars causing a lot of trouble, but seldom have we seen lap cars actually losing it all by themselves. And this chicane here seems to be going fine. Again, the exit, Arjuna. The exit. I mean, you just have to be so gentle with your throttle. If you don't, spins like that can be quite a regular occurrence here.
Yeah, and we'll jump back now to this pass. There you can see Cesar Manzardo getting a little bit of a slide going in towards turn number 2, and Mark Usher going to take full advantage of that. He's not going to turn down an opportunity like that to just move himself up into a podium position. He's now got the tough task of chasing down some drivers in front of him. He's still got to look behind, though. You can see the gap actually hasn't built up that much, Sumo. But unfortunately, we'll just have to make a little bit of comment on that lapped car. Fighting back a little bit too hard, given that we already had quite a few incidents in this race.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're at a circuit like Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, where you know for a fact that any space on the circuit is a bit of a luxury, you just need to get out of the way. Again, you have the right to fight at a circuit like a speedway, like Richmond or Indianapolis or anything like that. But on a road course, I would certainly not advise anything quite like that, because all the other cars, they're coming in and they're coming in hot. You certainly need a lot more concentration at road courses like this one, where you actually have to navigate through your braking points and your turn-in markers and all that stuff. So, oh, the lap car right there could have caused a lot of trouble. Thankfully for the other guys, he just spun out by himself. Otherwise, the consequences on this particular race could be quite huge. And thankfully, no major incidents back at the top now.
And this track has definitely changed from when it was first created. It was much more of a technical track, and it's now become, Sumo, especially on the F1 calendar, a true test of power. And you know, with power, it's not just about how you get up to speed, but as these guys break down into the wall, into the chicane rather, coming past the wall of champions, it's also about how effectively your brakes can hold up in a very, very long race. There's some very heavy braking zones, and Cesar Manzardo choosing not to get involved there, but he's got Andrew Kinsella now, who's going to take a look at just all now kicking off, Sumo.
Yeah, it is indeed. So right there, Manzardo just decided to stay behind. Now Kinsella tries to make the best of it into the chicane. Is he looking? He's not quite, because Kinsella stays behind. He is doing the smart thing though by staying in the draft and trying to conserve out with the fuel a little bit, but I'm sure that the dirty air will be kicking behind right there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure, and you can see him being very ginger on the throttle just as they come out of turn number 7. Head under the bridge into the braking zone of turn 8, and right now Mark Usher, he's got passed back into third, Sumo, which is where he started the race. He's had a little bit of an issue as Andrew Kinsella has an issue of his own. That right foot just getting a little bit too greedy, and he's lost a whole heap of time. Let's try and get a replay of that one.
Oh boy, it is just so easy to do things like that when you're actually focusing on the car right ahead of you. Tunnel vision is the word I'd like to use. When you're too focused, that tiny errors can cause you major points and major time as well. Kinsella just getting too hard on the exit. And apart from losing time, his tires may be heavily flat-spotted because he's trying to control that car desperately. Somehow he just claws on, but the pressure and the relentless pressure that may be in there, oof, he's going to lose a lot of grip later on.
Yeah, and it's going to take at least a few corners here for those tires just to cool down a little bit after that sideways moment for the Canadian. He's still only a second behind this little battle pack right now, so still the potential to just close back up and potentially look towards that last stint of the race to look for the pass for what will be, Sumo, the battle for the final podium position.
Yes, indeed. It's quite heating up right here. Four-way battle for this one. Kinsella with that mistake slightly backwards at this stage. Pretty sure that with all the raw pace that he's got here this weekend, he can catch up rather soon. So all nice and easy at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. In the middle part of the race, we kind of expected things to settle down a little bit, with the drivers realizing that it doesn't really make sense to go wheel to wheel at a certain stage, because then again, you're just losing time to the leader, who is Matt Farrow at this stage, and boy oh boy is he dominating this one.
And Matt Farrow's main concern so far, Sumo, has been lap traffic. There's another car who's just going to get out of the way, and on your screen now, there is the lap gaps. 16.8 seconds and 25 laps into this race. We're not even at the halfway point of this one, and Sumo, if there's any issues for any of these drivers, they're going to have to start thinking about the fact that they may be in the position to be lapped come the end of this one.
Exactly, and with a driver like Matt Farrow fast approaching, you just don't want to be in his way, because he's such a fast one. He is completely, I would say, in a different league to the other drivers in comparison to the iRating. But again, when he comes past, the one thing you must do, move out of the way, because after the race then, you will be subject to a lot of heavy words as we see a car in the netting. Whoa, that's a wild accident, Arjuna.
Yeah, that was the lapped car that Matt Farrow had just got past as well. We'll grab a replay. It's coming out of turn number 7. We've seen a few incidents, and just hard into the wall, and unfortunately for Janos Modos, that is going to be the end of his one. No chance of getting that one fixed in time to get back on track.
I'm just going to quote a meme over here. Do you ever look at things and wonder how did they actually get right there? For Janos Modos, that was a perfect example. He just slid past, and how did he end up in the netting right there? That is a rather bizarre accident, but certainly a fatal one for him. A critical, terminal one, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word I should use.
We knew exactly what you meant. Janos Modos unfortunately going to be retiring from this one. We jump back to the battle for third though, because they are actually Sumo closing in a little bit on David Soranzo, who's got a little bit checked up in traffic right now. And I think the main thing here that Mark Usher's going to be thinking about, who leads this group of 3, is he knows that he can't be in a situation where he's fighting too hard, because I think his priority is definitely going to be just closing in on the number 8 car in second.
Yes, indeed. And if he does fight a bit too hard again, he may be losing in quite a bit of time, and which will eventually cause him a lot of damage later on in this race. And again, it just seems like Matt Farrow's in a different league of his own. So these guys are going to need quite a Herculean effort to try and close up to him. But again, they want to make sure that they maximize all the points that they get from their particular pack. So battling a bit too hard could be putting in a bit too many unnecessary risks at this stage, especially considering that it's quite a long race and we're just approaching the halfway marker right now. So for Soranzo and Asha and all the other guys, stay calm, stay a bit more focused, and try and be a bit more aggressive in the later stages. That's what I would advise them right now.
And you can see how the gap to second has just been getting chipped away at half a second on lap 24. It's been a little bit more even on some of the other laps, but that gap definitely just getting dwindled down, and the Frenchman going to start feeling the pressure in his rearview mirror at some point. And Mark Usher's already made one mistake so far. Hopefully he can keep up what has been a strong recovery drive to this point. David Toth, though, looking strong and just going to back out of the throttle soon. Well, he knows, I think, the importance of these guys catching that car further up the road.
Exactly, that's one really calculated measurement that these guys are taking around, because in the end of the day, you want to get up the best points position as far as possible, and you just have to play the long game with this one. You can actually prioritize all your efforts on getting a few good qualifying style laps over here and trying to close up with the other cars, but eventually, if you do put too much of stress and pressure on your tires, you will be just chewing them off a bit too early, and later on you'll be losing a lot of time, Arjuna. So for them, it's all about playing the long game and trying to maximize the points and your results later on. It isn't really all about maximizing your situation right now, but thinking about the future and getting the best result in the end.
Yeah, but having said that, that gap between Mark Usher and Cesar Manzado, it's really climbed up, because Cesar, as he bounces over the curbs once again, is really just losing time here. So I think Dave is going to be looking to potentially try and get the move done after the chicane, after the hairpin now, in towards the chicane, and he's very close. And they get the power down very gingerly onto the power, and potentially here, Sumo, this is one of those opportunities to use those 10 push-to passes that you have, but David seemingly choosing not to use it, and as we run down towards the chicane, he's going to just have back off once again, and the gap out front definitely just getting built up.
Exactly, so these guys just need to get on the aggressive and trying to make sure that they close up the gap right here. He's got 7 push-to passes right now, and I mean, that's quite a decent amount to consider that we're already halfway through into the race. So he's certainly conserving quite a bit of it towards the later half of the race. But the thing with the push-to passes is that all the drivers tend to use them up later on in the race. They keep them for the final half when they know for a fact that the battles can get a bit too exciting. But the problem with that is, if everyone has a similar amount of push to passes later on, the effect of it just gets neutralized of sorts. So the push to pass doesn't really become more of a strategic element, it just becomes more of, let's say, a bit of a liability of sorts. So you try and just keep it off for later on, and every single driver just wants to get rid of it. So how they use it is going to be critical. You just have to make sure that they get in the right timing. Too early and you may just not have it for later on. Too late and the advantage may not be as significant. The perfect timing needs to be found so that you can get the best out of the push to pass that you have right here.
Yeah, and these guys are approaching some traffic. You can see Mark Usher just reaching the tail end of it. It's a little bit further up the road. We've seen David Toth as well. He's just gotten past Cesar Manzado. So now the job for that driver jumping into the series for the first time this year. He's going to have to get the pedal down. And Sumo, that gap, it's about 1.5 seconds now. So if he wants any hope of being in this podium contention, he's got to get the move on. And Mark Usher continuing to lose time in the traffic now. They do not want to get out of the way once again.
It's a proper Friday afternoon jam here in Montreal, and boy oh boy, it's getting rather tricky for some of these drivers right here. They must navigate it to perfection, because at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve there are not many opportunities where you can actually go side by side with another car, let alone lap traffic, who isn't really in the mood to let you pass. So for these drivers, they may just be on thin ice at this stage. One tiny error and the walls are waiting right there with open arms to try and bring you to yourselves. And for them, it's just getting too tricky, and they may be in the midst of a battle, losing a bit too much time at this stage.
Yeah, and that first car they've just made their way past, that's Robin Glennox, who's down in 20th place right now, and it's really just kind of formed about a second buffer between each of these cars right now. And we'll see what's going to happen, because there's more cars to go. Stefan Walter, one of the cars in front, that's the 17, and there's one more car a little bit further down the road. That is the car they're chasing, though, Sumo, so they can see him. That's the 8 car. That's David Soranzo. The gap's about 2.1 seconds. It wasn't affected by the traffic, and Mark Usher has effectively cleared all of it now. And you can see, though, further back, if we jump to Cesar Manzado, just how much he was kept up there. He's lost about 1.5 seconds to David Toth in front.
So the traffic certainly turning out to be quite an influential factor in this particular race. The drivers must be so crucial about that. Oh boy, the curbs. Arjuna, did you see that? The curbs just literally killing off the suspension, and well, had it been a bit more aggressive, that suspension would have broken into half and snapped out of the way. Well, the drivers just must be so cautious at that final chicane right there, because again, go a bit too aggressive, your suspension is just going to be snapped into half. Going a bit too smooth right there, and you may end up losing too much time. That last corner right there is just a proper mystery for so many of these competitors right here.
It's not just these competitors. This track has always been one of the more challenging ones on the calendar. It's had quite a few, Sumo, long races where you've had, multiple red flag periods, multiple safety cars, and the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, the longest World Championship Grand Prix ever. 4 hours, 4 minutes, and 39 seconds. You know what was the previous longest race before that? The 1951 Indianapolis 500 at 3 hours, 57 minutes. So just a little bit of history there, Sumo. Back in the day when the Indy 500 was part of the F1 calendar.
Back in a time where probably none of us watching right here were alive, and whoa, that was a crazy time indeed, with a lot of guest drivers coming in just to compete in the Indy 500, and strange times in the world of motorsport indeed, as we see Kinsella on the tail right there. But Arjuna, the one thing about the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix that we must speak about right here is Jenson Button. He had tons of penalties, tons of crashes here and there, too many visits to the pit lane. But in the end, this particular circuit has the opportunity to spring up surprises. So even if you're Matt J. Farrow at this stage, things can go wrong. Again, I just have to go back to the 1988 Monaco Grand Prix where Ayrton Senna was leading with a margin of around a minute. He was just commanding, dominating that race. But one tiny error at the Poitiers corner, and his race was over in a second, with all the other drivers capitalizing on that. So for Matt Farrow at this stage, it's not over until the fat lady sings. So for him, it's still quite a tricky job up in so, especially at street circuits where the margins for error are just so low here.
The gap's now up to 22 seconds, and there you can see just how it's been progressing lap on lap. The last 3 laps or so, about 3 seconds gained from the Team Redline drivers. So, like you say, Sumo, anything can happen. Jenson Button, I don't think, would have been expecting to be anywhere near the fight for the win all the way back in 2011, but you persist and you never know. And one of the challenges here, Sumo, for Matt is going to be all the lapped cars in front of him. That's the 11 of Vincent Wallen, so currently Matt's lapping up to the 14th place car on track. Sorry, Sumo, there's been an incident. It's Mark Usher. It's the Wall of Champions. It happened. Mark Usher has crashed. We're going to get the replay up on screen right now, and well, you can see right there, Sumo, there's no one around him. It's going to be self-inflicted.
He comes in, just gets a good entry and the exit. Oh, he's lost it all by himself. Oh my goodness, the other car right there did such a tremendous job to avoid him. But Arjuna, it's the exit. The exit has just claimed so many drivers right here. And Mark Usher just adds his name to another list of illustrious drivers claimed by the Wall of Champions. That chicane is much harder than it looks like. It may just look like a simple left-right turn, but the intricacies of just nailing that down correctly have claimed so many drivers. If the likes of Michael Schumacher can make a mistake right there, anyone can.
Yeah, and David Toth did a very good job there, Sumo, to just get out of the way as best as he could. And as far as I can tell from the pictures that are back up on your screen right now, he seemingly managed to avoid too much damage. And that's going to be the most important thing because, you know, at a track like this, you need the top speed, but I mean, if you don't have downforce, Sumo, getting through some of these corners is going to be very tricky. And there you can see a good shot of that front wing. That number 3 car is up into 3rd place and fairly clean, I would say.
Fairly clean indeed. And Arjuna, that's a very good point that you've brought out over here about downforce and the setups. Because at a circuit like Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, when you actually have to commit quite a bit into the corners, you need that extra bit of thrust in your car when you're going to a fast-paced corner, like some of the chicanes right here. And I remember a story that I heard on one of the podcasts quite recently about Nigel Mansell and the Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel chicane at Silverstone, where in the practice, he just had to learn how to trust his car. He went up to the engineers and said, I know for a fact that I can extract 0.5 of a second extra in qualifying. The only thing I need to do is to learn how to trust this particular car. And that can only happen when you have enough downforce on the car as well. And that just allowed Nigel Mansell to go in and be 5 seconds faster in the qualifying. And eventually, he won that particular British Grand Prix right there. So for these drivers, having the trust in your car is essential. And that can come when you have just the right amount of downforce. But again, there is a trade-off with that as well. Because we've got a long back straight right here. So we're coming up to that one exactly right now. All the extra downforce can just create an extra amount of drag. And on the straights, you can just be like a proper turtle with the other cars with lower downforce, closing it back up on you and just making you look like a sitting duck right there. So again, the trade-off having to be considered. And in the end, Arjuna, I remember one thing that Paul, one of our co-commentators on RaceSpot, said to me: setups are all about making the right amount of compromise. And I don't think that anything could be even more appropriate at this stage here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
I think that is a 100% accurate thing to say, especially at a track like this. It's all about how do you compromise. And we look at Cesar Manzado. He's caught a lapped car in a fairly dangerous spot for him. It's coming through corners number 3 and 4. You lose a lot of time here. That car in front just checking up, just not as fast as Cesar would have wanted. And now Andrew Kinsella, in fact, is going to have to make the move down the inside into turn number 6. And he's going to get clear fairly easily there. He goes a bit deep under braking, able to control the car. And you know, these guys are fighting hard, but as a result, they've lost about 2 seconds to David Toth, even with that incident in front. So Sumo, coming into this one, I kind of had mentioned to you, there were 3 names I was looking out for: Matt Farrow, Mark Usher, and David Toth, the number 1, 2, and 3 cars in the field, signifying the 3 strongest drivers by iRating. And we've seen Mark Usher with some fairly strong performances, unfortunately a few mistakes as well, but David Toth, he's really picking up the pace right now. He's slowly just charging away and chipping away at David Saranzo for second. He didn't have the greatest start, fighting all the way back in 9th and up in 3rd now. Pretty good result so far.
Indeed, David Toth has been just doing an immaculate job through the traffic. Again, the same traffic is coming up to him as well, but he just seems to be doing a little bit of a better job in terms of navigating that out right now. So for Toth, all plain sailing for now, 35 laps in, but there's still quite a good race coming up in store later on as well. But I have to go back to the point that you mentioned right there, Arjuna, about a very good friend who's competed in this particular series. It is Usher, because Usher, he certainly had the pace, you know, with all the raw pace that he carried into this race with Kinsella as well. I kind of had a feeling that these 2 guys would be on the podium along with Matt Farrow, but what's really turned out to happen is that Usher, as you mentioned, has made that one critical mistake that has just compromised on his consistency, and that really has caused him to lose a lot of time, a lot of positions in this particular race. So again, it's easier said than done, but that consistency is really an underappreciated tool here in terms of racing right here.
It very much is, and it can be very difficult in a track like this where you're always slamming on the brakes as hard as you can to keep up that focus. We jump back to a battle on the edge of the top 10. It's Connie Nasland and Daniel Manzano, and Daniel racing for the Laps at Racing team, partnered with Full Send Racing. They've been on a lot of race broadcasts over the last few weeks, and something, Sumal, I don't know if you can notice this, but Daniel has made the same mistake that many other people have been caught out by. That decal layer on the rear wing, it's upside down, and I don't think his league is called, I'm not even going to try and say Laps at Racing backwards, but yeah, just a little bit of a mistake there, as the leader is also coming up to lap these guys who are fighting hard.
Well, that's another good observation that he made right there, Arjuna. I normally wouldn't have checked out on things like that, but again, paint scheme's gone wrong episode number 1 right here for him.
Yeah, the only reason, Subal, I even look for stuff like that is I remember when I got my first IndyCar paint scheme done, it's Connie Laszlo going a little bit too wide at the chicane. He's going to be able to get a good exit off the corner, though, and I think the number 20 machine just going to pull to the side and let the leader through. But like I was saying, Sumbul, the only reason I look for it is that on my very first IndyCar paint scheme, I think it took me about 6 months or so before I noticed this. Daniel Manzano actually going to peel into the pit lane. So the pit window, Sumo, well and truly open now. And this is what we were talking about in terms of the split strategies. Some drivers may be choosing to come in a lap early here, or a lap or two early, get a full tank of fuel, and then get out in a little bit more clean air. And Daniel's not going to lose the time that he would have lost giving up the place to Matt Farrow.
Absolutely, and the one thing that could play out under Daniel's hand at this stage is that with the fresher tyres he can just hope for clean air, and if he does get clean air, he can go in and clock some stellar lap times and close up all the gaps that he lost right there. So for Daniel, it's a big opportunity, but from the looks of things, Arjuna, there are cars on the track everywhere, so the clean air, it's just a bit of a luxury at this stage. So for him, that undercut may not really have the biggest of advantages there right now.
Yeah, definitely not, and he's come out right behind one of the battles further up in your field, and that's the battle for 4th and 5th. So Cesar Manzano has just gotten past, and now Andrew Kinsella is going to be looking to try and find a way past. And Sumo, this might not have worked out as intended. He's going to lose a lot of time right there, and in fact now, if he has the pace to be able to go faster than these guys in front, he's not going to be able to really push that issue because, you know, they're fighting hard in front of him.
Exactly, and that clean air is just an understated advantage, Arjuna. Not a lot of people speak about that enough, and with so many cars right in front of you fighting hard, you just don't have that sort of advantage. You can find yourself in dirty air, and you may end up losing so much of time, which can compromise your race eventually when all the strategies start to culminate towards the end. Kinsella, now, what can I say about him? He's had such a good race right now, but Cesar Manzano right there too, so that gap around 2 seconds right now, and Kinsella, with the pit window nearly approaching at this stage, he can get a special strategy in to try and close up the gap, but I have a feeling they're all going to be leveled off at the same strategy right now, as David Soranzo is in the pit lane.
Yeah, so driver from second place, he was one of those cars who didn't extend it a further lap, so down on the lane, Andrew Kinsella also following him in, and we've had quite a few of the other cars as well. Andreas like Urka Lindstrom, we haven't talked about them too much, but they've been inside the top 10. They're down already out of the lane, in fact, for their final stops, and David Soranzo is going to be in that second pit box. We'll see how long the stop is this time. We're suspecting around a 9-second stop, and coming off the jacks, it's about 10.4, so slightly slower, and David Toth has been piling on the pressure behind, so he's gone one extra lap here, and we're going to see exactly how the pit strategy plays out from these two drivers. David Toth definitely has been finding pace as the race goes on.
He really has been. He's just come into an element of his own, and you can certainly see that from the way he's driving at this stage. Leader in the pits as well. Matt Farrow has finally blinked. He's come up exactly, Arjuna, on lap number 38, so he's just going by the ideal strategy of 19 laps at a time. And Matt Farrow at this stage is doing just a commanding job at the front. Toth as well, I mean, as I mentioned previously, he's just been at an element of his own. With all the clean air that he's getting right now, you can just make all the best use of it to try and gain up as much time as possible. As I say that, though, he's in the pit lane.
Into the pit lane, so Matt Farrow also there, and he's just been in the box already for about 7 seconds, and He drops off the jack. He's only had an 8-second stop there, Sumo, so he's gone about 2 seconds shorter. Maybe he knows something. That's a lot of fuel to not be putting into that machine compared to his competitors. But as David Toth gets in towards his own box, and there he goes, he's going to stop. We'll try and bring up a track map right now so you can see where David Soranzo is going to be coming around. And there is the track map. He's coming through the Champions Chicane and coming through onto the start-finish line. I think David might have it secured here.
Yeah, here he comes though. Oh, it's going to be a bit tight, and now here he comes. Yeah, thankfully David just keeps it nice and clean right now. But remember, cold tires, that may have a major impact, because initially when you come out of the pit lane, your tires are very, very cold, and you have to get the temperatures in as soon as possible, because if you don't, well, the car could just be very overstated. It can be out of control, and the lap times that you may lose are going to be substantial. So for David Soranzo, a big opportunity to gain up time over here in the next couple of laps while Toth puts his tires to temperature.
So there you can see the pit stop time for number 3 car, who's just moved himself up into 2nd place, and 8.1 seconds on the stop. We then jump back to David Soranzo, 10.4. So that's where a lot of this time loss has come from. The total time in the box, in the pit lane as well, about 3 seconds different as well. And it's a few cars further down your field having issues, but we're going to stick with some of these battles. We'll jump back to the battle for 4th, because Andrew Kinselli's come out right behind Cesar Manzado, and he's putting all the pressure on as they run down towards the chicane, coming to finish the 40th lap of this one, Sumo.
As Kinsella tries to make the move right there, and you may be wondering what really makes up for the differences in the pit stops. Well, it can be the amount of fuel that you put into the car, because if you haven't really been conserving quite a lot, your car needs to be filled up with a lot more fuel when you're in the pit stops, and even a couple of liters here and there can have a major impact in terms of the time you spend in the pit lane. Remember, in motorsports, a second is a bit like a day right here, so that sort of time that you can lose in the pit lane, it's not really hard. It's not really very easy to gain that same amount of time on the track. So just trying to conserve your fuel can be such a major advantage when it comes to the pit stop. So even that couple of seconds gap that we saw in the pit lane with one of the cars right there filling a bit longer, it's going to be so tricky for them to gain that back up on the track. So conserving fuel, it's so critical right here to win a race on road courses.
Yeah, and we talk about undercut and overcut. It's not really been one or the other that's been stronger further up in your field, but just for those who are curious, I just took a look on my timing screen. Daniel Manzano, he's about 2.5 seconds clear of Connie Nasland right now, and there you can kind of just see the undercut when you have the traffic around you, Sumo, can be a little bit stronger. And, you know, Daniel Manzano, he's going to secure what will be 9th position eventually on track once some of the other cars cycle down the pit lane as a result of, you know, choosing to come down at the right time.
Exactly, so those sort of things clearly playing into his advantage at this stage, and the ball right now is in his court. For how long he keeps it is completely on his abilities as we now are heading towards the final stage of this race, Arjuna. No more pit stops on the car, so it's just a flat-out finish till the end, and it's all dependent on how the drivers can make sure that they get the best out of their driving ability. And one guy who's actually made sure that he's got the best out of his driving ability is Matt Farrow, because only recently he went in and smashed the lap timing record over here. He's gone in and put a 1 minute 20.997, and nobody in this race so far, Arjuna, has come into the 1 minute 20s, and he's approximately 3/10 faster than David Toth, who's the next fastest car right here. So he's completely been a league of his own.
Yeah, the red line driver has really not had too many issues, Sumo, and unfortunately, I mean, he jumps into this race, and one of the few IndyCar races I suspect he will run, and, you know, it's a broadcaster's race, and unfortunately, we've had plenty of nice things to say about him, but ultimately, as we see the lap time there being very consistent, just a 1/10 of a second slower that last time around. I mean, ultimately, Sumo, we haven't shown him that much because he hasn't had much to do.
Quite exactly, and the thing with the leaders is when you're actually doing quite a good job, I mean, when you don't really be in the spotlight as such, it can be a perfect example of a person doing a very, very good job. So for Matt Farrow at this stage, he doesn't need to be in the limelight. He's doing all things fine. Oh boy, those curbs at the exit, yeah.
Oh, there's a mistake, and Andrew Kinsella has just jumped over Cesar Manzado up into 4th place, and we've seen it so many times today, and we'll try and get a replay of that one up on your screen right now. But the Champions Corner, it's caught out some of the world's greatest racing drivers, and some of these virtual IndyCar drivers are learning just how challenging it is as well, Sumo.
Exactly, and if they could, they would just take a round trip to Montreal, go over there, take a spanner or something like that, and just demolish those curves right there, because they've been giving every single driver such a hard time. That final chicane, Arjuna, I mean, we've spoken about it time and again, but it's actually much trickier than it looks on camera. Wow, that is one tricky corner, because the entry is a bit tight as well. Big corner, there's barely any room at all. And if you get the exit wrong, the curve's right here on one side and the wall is right there on the other. You don't want to be a victim of either of those things, and just getting the perfect exit, well, it's easier said than done. So Kinsella making the best advantage of this right now, but Manzaro closing it rather soon at this stage.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Sumo, there's not much of this track that has not had a car hit it at some point.
Exactly.
That is just the nature of this track, and you look at the front of your shot now, that is the third place driver, David Soranzo, unfortunately running up in second for quite a while, and you see on your screen there's the gap to David Toth in front, and since the pit stops have cycled through, David has really just continued that momentum he built up and pulled away to a 5-second buffer. You then look, though, to the gaps behind. You see there, Andrew Kinsella. It was Cesar Manzado who's doing the chasing, but now the Canadians in that fourth position and half a second on that last lap. I think we're in for a battle here, Sumo. Interestingly enough, obviously, David, one of the first cars down the lane, he spent 2 seconds longer than some of these other cars. He may have a little bit more fuel to burn, but when it comes to that push-to-pass topic, Sumo, that's where that fuel to burn comes in handy, as Andrew Kinsella gets very loose coming out of the turn. I think that's turn 6, and now Cesar Manzado is going to get the place back.
Oh, Kinsella, he's just had all the pace in the world, but those tiny errors here and there have cost him so many points potentially. Again, it's not over and done yet, because there's still quite a few laps left right now, and it is just the time for Kinsella to come in and put a heroic performance and take home the podium. Comes to the hairpin, Arjuna, and now, Arjuna, it's just going to be the draft. A better exit and the draft, along with the push to pass, could just play into Kinsella's hands at this stage.
And there you can see on screen the push to pass active. Cesar Manzado to the inside, trying to defend here. But about 60 extra horsepower down this casino straight. Not going to be able to defend. Powerslide Motorsports back up into P number 4. And Andrew Kinsella, he's won one of these races already. He's now looking to try and get back to a podium. But one of the people who would have been smiling seeing that mistake is the Frenchman. He's now got a 3-second buffer, Sumo. I think this is going to be one of the battles to watch as we approach the last 10 laps of this race.
Now, interesting, Arjuna, we expect this final particular part of this race to be a proper flat-out shootout, but there's only one person on the track who's actually set a personal best, and that is Andreas Eick. So not a lot of drivers actually able to get the best of their abilities at this stage, as we see Stefan Walder entering the pit lane right now. So the funny thing is, we expect this final part to be a shootout, but not a lot of drivers are able to get the best lap times in at this stage. So funny to see how this is playing out, as John Downing is under a bit of pressure, I suppose.
Oh, and that is what caused Stefan Walder to come.
That's absurd.
Yeah, and that is what caused Stefan Walder to come down the pit lane. We'll grab one more view from an aerial look here. But John Downing just missed his braking point, slid right into the back there, and like you say, Sue, well, it's a very entertaining one to watch.
Now, I've always had this sort of feeling. I've tried it in a lot of arcade games, but I've just waited at the pit exit, waiting for the fast car to come by and pushing them into the pit lane. But that is a perfect example of what happened right there. The car just got pushed in, and Downing just pushed Stefan into the pit lane. And what can I say? That's probably one of the more entertaining things. I'm sorry, that you'll see in any iRacing race anywhere. Oh boy, what can I say?
Well, Asubal and myself try to recover from that one, and Stefan does get back out of the pit lane, so a forced pit stop there, and that was definitely a unique thing that we've not really seen too far. If anything, Subal, incidents like that just usually result in a big crash.
They really do, but when you actually get pushed in the pit lane like that, I mean, imagine if you're Stefan at this stage, you're seeing a car closing right up to the back of your gearbox, you're thinking, oh, please just don't hit me. It just gives you the gentlest of kisses, and then you go in the pit lane, and all of a sudden you've got your car at 80 kilometers per hour. It just would be such a sinking feeling for him. His shoulders sagging, and he must be like, oh goodness, not this again.
Well, something just to rub salt into the wounds as well. When you get touched like that from behind, Sumo, that damage to that rear diffuser area often then takes a further 15 seconds to repair. So Stefan had to spend 23 and a half total seconds in pit lane, and that just really adds the salt to the wounds. We continue to watch on your screen right now. Sorry, Sybil, the battle for fourth, because Cesar Manzano, he's sticking close behind here, and 8 laps to go. It's still close to third as well. There's still a lot of action still to go as we try to recover from that incident.
Exactly, and if you're any furniture at Stefan's out on this stage, hide, run away, hide, because once he's done with this race, he'll certainly be coming up and hurling all of those things right on the walls right there. But Kinsella at this stage, I mean, we promised we're done with that particular incident right there, but Kinsella now under a bit of pressure. Farrow's been leading and dominating this one. David Toth in second, Sorzano as well, but Kinsella, Arjuna, I had a feeling that he can actually get up to the podium at this stage, but he has to put in something special with only 8 laps left in this one now.
Yeah, the gap's about 1.6. The traffic, once again, I mean, you talk about there not being necessarily a blue flag rule. The 19 car, they're actually even looked to the inside of David Saranza, so traffic really playing a big factor. And as we wind down again, Matt Farrow crosses the line once again. He's just run away with this one. The gap out front, a full 30 seconds to David Toth. And we talked about the increasingly strong performance from David. The gap to these cars fighting for that final podium position is 8 seconds now. So one car really just found a lot of speed throughout the race. But as we come towards the last laps, this is where fatigue starts to set in. This is where the pressure starts to set in. And I think, Sumo, some of these battles might be decided almost by which driver can make the fewest mistakes.
Exactly. At this particular stage of the race, you just have to dive deep and dig deep within yourselves and try and find the extra bit of pace that you have within you. It's a really demanding race, this one, mentally as well, because you've got so many walls around you. It can just put you in a situation of a tunnel vision where you can barely see anything at all. And the amount of concentration that you need at a road course like this one, it is just immense, as we see Manzano closing up on Kinsella, who made a slight error a couple of corners ago. So Arjuna, the drivers at this stage, if they're mentally taxed at this stage right here, they can just be making too many mistakes, which will eventually cause them to lose too much of time in the end.
Yeah, Andrew with a big lockup of the left front tire in towards turn number 6, and that did close the gap. And once again, he goes very deep in towards the hairpin that leads onto this back straight right now, and the gap to David Saranzo in third has opened up just a little bit more, and the gap behind has closed up just a little bit more. And this is where that mental pressure starts to come in. You talk about those walls being ever present. The wall of champions is a threat every single lap we go around there again, and you see how much curbs the two drivers choosing to use. The Power Slide Motorsports driver choosing to cut his way, trying to avoid the curbs at all costs, but the number 5 car, Sumo, just bouncing the car off, using as much of them as possible.
I mean, of course, at one side of things, you want to be saying that, okay, I went really aggressive and I went really flat out and used every single one of those curves. But the curves here at this circuit are not the usual ones. They are really bumpy and really high as such, so they can be causing a bit of damage to your suspension as well. And the problem with that is, if you go a bit too aggressive in the later parts of this race, considering this particular stage that we've got here with 6 laps to go, your car may not really feel right because you've just knackered it and just hit it down to an extreme level right now. So for all the drivers, going on the curves may sound nice and fancy, but in the end, it will just backfire at this stage, as we now ride on board with Kinsella, that is, if I'm not wrong.
It is Kinsella, and Matt Farrow has crossed the line, so 5 laps to go with 4 push-to-passes still in the pocket of the number 9 car. Will jump around these guys who are fighting for that final podium fight in front. David Saranza, you can see there, the 3rd box on the left side of the steering wheel. 2 push-to-passes remaining. We then jump back to 5th place as Manzano. He's got none of them left. Sumo, that's going to be a very tricky job to pass someone who's got 4 push-to-passes left in front of you.
It's all going to be down to his own skill, commitment, and the better exit that he can actually get from all the corners, and the draft as well. With barely any push-to-passes at this particular stage of the race, passing can be incredibly challenging, and that is what we spoke about earlier on, Arjuna. Just managing the best strategy for a push-to-pass is going to be critical, because at a crucial stage, I mean, imagine if he was defending the position, it could have been far, far worse for him right now. So it's all going to be down to the conviction that he has. And it seems like that he's just closing the gap right now to Kinsella, but just not enough. He's just not close enough to make a move right now with 5 laps to go.
It's going to be tough, and We're in the center of Montreal, just 20 minutes away from Montreal International Airport. The cars are running around, and Matt Farrow will jump back to him for just a few moments as he crosses the line once again. So 4 laps to go for him, and there's the gap, Subal, 32 seconds. Let's just briefly touch on him. Let's just celebrate what a dominating drive it's been for the Redline driver.
He has been absolutely sublime. I mean, we often say that drivers don't really put a foot wrong. He's not even put a finger wrong in this particular race as such, Matt Farrow. The gap of 32 seconds in a 53-lap race, that is absolutely incredible. I mean, I just sort of wonder that we're having 2 different categories in this race. The Matt Farrow race, the David Toth race, and then the ones with all the other guys right behind of them. They have just been in a completely different league as such. So Matt Farrow proving why Team Redline is probably known to be one of the best racing teams in sim racing all around. So again, it's hard to find out any mistakes as such. And you know, you kind of get a difference in classes with him as well, because he's been on the pace as well, and at the same time he hasn't really made any major mistakes as well. So he's sort of putting in the qualifying laps in comparison to the other drivers' paces, but he hasn't really made any major errors at the same time as well. So that is exactly what you're looking for in an ideal racing driver, and Matt Farrow certainly putting it to the show right here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
And the Redline team obviously going to be involved tomorrow in the 24 Hours of Spa powered by VCO, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the post-race show, because with 4 laps to go, it's going to be 3 very shortly given the pace that Matt Farrow continues to put on the field. The battle for third, it's getting closer. The gap's almost 1 second, and those push-to-passes coming in very crucial for the Canadian. He goes a little bit wide again, but can he maximize the momentum on the exit? Gets a little bit of wheel spin, but there you go. You can see on the steering wheel, push to pass on. 3 of those push to passes left, Sumo. How close is this going to be? The gap's about 1 second now.
Well, those push to passes, the way he uses this out at this stage is going to be super important to determine where he finishes in the end. He just has to manage this out particularly well. 3 laps to go, Arjuna. This is where things get really exciting. Kinsella under pressure right now, but boy, I'm telling you this one. I have a feeling that this one is just going to be pretty much very, very close to the line. I just can't wait to see how this one pans out in the end.
Kinsella lost a little bit of time through the final chicane, and the gap's now 1.4 seconds. Unfortunately for the Frenchman in third currently, he's got a lapped car in front. That's Connie Naslund. You see him coming through the picture right now. But there you can see the cars running third, fourth, and fifth as they work their way through turn 6 and 7. Now on the run down towards turn number 8. This is going to be a very interesting one because Cesar Manzado continues to close on his own terms to Andrew Kinsella, but something to remember, the relative push to passes of all of these drivers. Andrew Kinsella has the most engine power left available to him, as Matt Farrow, Subal, another fastest lap, a 1:26.84.
He is an absolute beast around this circuit. It just reminds me a bit of Lewis Hamilton, you know, when he's actually leading and dominating a race, he just looks at himself and says, what can I do to make this a little more exciting? You know, I have an idea, I'll go for a fastest lap, and that is exactly what Matt Farrow has done right here. Crazy, crazy performance that he's put in today.
And Andrew Kinsella tries to replicate that kind of speed in the last few stages of the race and gets a little bit loose coming through that chicane, but got a nice draft from Connie Naslund, who moved out of the way, and 2 laps to go, 2 push to passes left. He locks up the inside front going through turn number 1. That's going to cost him valuable time. The gap in front, we'll pull it up on the screen right now. There you can see 1.2 seconds. It's looking like, Sumo, a little bit too late for Andrew to be able to do anything.
Exactly, so for Andrew, the time is really running out and closing up a gap of 1.2 seconds. Oh boy!
Andreas Ike, he's had an issue.
Oh no!
We'll try and quickly grab a replay.
Oh boy!
But he was running in 6th place all on his own, and here it is through the wall of, through the final chicane coming in towards the wall of champions.
The curbs.
And you could also see on his screen, he was trying to activate the push to pass there, and that's cost him even more time, but it is the white flag. Matt Farrow, he's come across turn number 1, turn number 2, in towards sector 2 now, and Sumo will quickly just ride with him because the gaps for that battle for third have just separated a little bit. But Matt Farrow is qualified on pole by more than a second. Fastest lap now the last time around. He's just put the pace on this field, almost 0.7 of a second faster than anyone else in the race as well.
Men versus boys, that's the only thing I can say right here. Matt Farrow coming in and teaching a lesson to every single driver right here in this particular series that the bar of standards of driving over here can be taken far higher. The way he's performed at this particular race, I can't even remember him making a single bad lap at all. And when you have races like that, and when people actually struggle to find even a single error that you made right there, you know for a fact that you've had a good race. And now Arjuna, he's just coming up to the end. What a drive it has been for the Team Redline driver right here.
Yeah, just one more corner and he's going to be hoping. We talked about the fact that anything can happen, hoping the Wall of Champions doesn't catch him out, but there he goes, safely through and across the line. And after 53 laps here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, it's Team Redline's Matt Farrow across the line. He's going to take the win by what's looking like it's going to be about 40 seconds over any of the cars behind. We'll jump back to the battle for third because somehow the gap has closed up a little bit, and Andrew Kinsella is only half a second behind as they come down onto the back straight for the final time. He's got one.
Here they come, then a bit of an anticlimactic finish it turns out to be this one.
He's still got one push to pass left, Sumal. He's going to be trying to draft up to the back as much as he can and try to carry all the momentum he can through this final chicane. Is he able to close up at all? A little bit, but like you say, Sumal, a little bit anticlimactic, and across the line is going to be the Frenchman. It's going to be some good, valuable championship points for him.
Yes, indeed. He just fended off Kinsella right there towards the end, and Soranzo coming home in P3, taking up the final podium slot of this one. And I've got to say, Arjun, the battle that we saw over there for P3, P4, P5 at that particular mid part of this race just kept me entertained by such a huge amount. I mean, fantastic race in the end, this one, though. Soranzo being a bit dominant at the start, at the top of the field, but again, the other drivers, they kept a lot of things happening going on here, and I have to say, I'm pretty entertained.
And the final cars just working their way across the line. It did look as though Cesar Manzardo ran out of fuel coming through that final chicane, and it was able to get across the line without any difficulty, Sumal. That was the level of the gap that they had built up, but final cars have crossed the finish line. The final results coming up on your screen, and it was Team Redline's Matt Farrow winning by 36 seconds from David Toth. David getting stronger throughout the race and really just finding his feet in that crucial middle portion of the race. David Soranzo is going to get some valuable championship points. Finishing close behind him, though, was Andrew Kinsella, the Canadian, not able to get it done this time, but a fourth place here to go along with his win at Road America. A good few months for the Canadian. Then Cesar Manzardo, Erka Lindstrom, and then Andreas Eich is going to be the final car on the lead lap. So that spin, Sumal, potentially cost Andreas 6th position. Then some cars further down, one lap down, Richard Craig, Daniel Manzano, and Vincent Wallen rounds out the top 10. Quickly just show you the rest of your field as well. Connie Naslin, Mark Johnston, Daniel Naventa, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and Charles Ante. So just show you the scale of Matt Farrow's pace, Subal. He basically lapped almost the entire field. There was only about 8 cars, and he could have done a bit more as well.
He just could have. He was just on the top of his game here today. What can I say about Matt Farrow? He was just on... He was literally in a class of his own. That's the only thing I can say. But again, a shame that the likes of Mark Usher and Andrew Wood couldn't really take a more active part in this particular race, because had they done the same, it would have been a little more exciting. But that said, there's not much that we can be disappointed about. Every single factor came into play in the end. The traffic, the battles, the cars, some of marbles as well at certain points of time, and of course, the Wall of Champions in the end, Arjuna. What a race that was.
It was 53 action-packed laps, and we'll take a little bit of a break here and hopefully come back with some interviews with some of the drivers further up in your field. This was RaceSpot TV's coverage of the IndyCar iRacing Series Round 8 from the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. We'll be right back after these messages.
Coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back
straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Loma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett low. 4 wide at the stripe. For all his work here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
After a fun 53 laps, it was Team Redline's Matt Farrow taking a dominating victory by 36 seconds from David Toth. It's a race that didn't have too many championship implications, with many of the championship contenders not making it, but Sumo, he still were put on to a good show, and there was some good fighting. And even though this might not have had the same number of passes as maybe our race at Road America did, I still had a lot of fun calling this one.
We actually did. I mean, there were so many things to be considered about. I mean, especially with the strategy, with the wall of champions as well, and the traffic. You know, I didn't really expect the traffic to be as major of a factor as it turned out to be in the end, but eventually just made up for quite a fun race. But boy, at the top, Matt Farrow, what can I say about him?
Well, what can you say indeed, other than just sublime and amazing? And, you know, Team Redline comes into the IndyCar every once in a while. I think the last time I can remember Sumo was when Patrick Wolf made a few appearances in the Nordschleife week. And, you know, sometimes there's just combos like this, you know, the IndyCar at a track like this, which really entices some of these drivers that enjoy driving high downforce cars.
Exactly, and the circuit Gilles Villeneuve is such a fun track to drive on. It's such a flow circuit. I mean, where you just keep on driving and driving and driving and driving. And I suppose that must be the case with Matt Farrow over here. I mean, you must have thought, okay, good fun race with the IndyCars at circuit Gilles Villeneuve. I'll give it a shot. And he gave it a shot, and his best shot it was, because in the end, he came up with such a huge victory. I don't even remember the gap. What, 40 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, it might as well have been an entire year given the gap. But at the time, the only interview that we have currently standing by is Powerslide Motorsports' Andrew Kinsella. Andrew, you finished fourth in this one, and maybe not as strong as the Road America win, but still a very good result given, you know, the strength of field. We had some really strong drivers. Matt Farrow, David Toth, and Mark Usher were the top three. And yeah, fourth place. You can't be too unhappy with that one.
Yeah, no, definitely not unhappy with that. Yeah, as you said, very, very strong field. Matt had us covered by a long ways. I have no idea how he was that fast consistently lap after lap. And But had a good battle with David, Cesar, other David. Who else was in there? Mark was in there for a while. We were all really similar on pace. We would go back and forth, trading lap times and pull in, and then they would pull back out, and I would pull in again. And it was a lot of fun. Did have that lap car with about 6 to go that probably cost me a real legitimate shot at third. Just how it goes with lap cars. Sometimes they just don't have a good spot to let you by, and but other than that, I think fourth was about all I could hope for. It was definitely a really hard race. You were dancing the rear of the car basically the entire time. It's so hard to put the power down coming out of these slow corners, and that's basically all you have here is first and second gear chicanes. And so you're just dancing the entire time, making sure that you're not losing the end. So it was definitely a workout for sure.
Yeah, we definitely saw there were more than a few occasions in which potentially lapped cars could have gotten out of the way a little bit earlier, but you talk about some of those issues, and it's something that you got caught out yourself a few times, but this is a very mentally demanding track. You talk about the first and second gear corners, after 53 laps here, and you were pushing really, really hard at the end. Just how tired are you? And in those final few laps, how worried were you about making just a small mistake?
So I'm definitely exhausted and drenched in sweat behind my rig here, but I wasn't too worried about making a mistake actually, because I was so focused on trying to catch David, and I was just taking a couple of tenths out of him every lap. I did make a small mistake. I think it was 2 laps to go into turn 1 and lost maybe 3 or 4 tenths because I just locked the front tire a little bit, and so that probably cost me a little bit too. But other than that, yeah, I find it's much easier to focus when you have a target right in front of you that you're trying to hunt down, and almost got there, not quite.
So as a Canadian, I want to ask your opinion of this track, because obviously, IndyCar hasn't come here in a while, and there are a lot of things that might preclude IndyCar from returning here. But IndyCar usually goes to Toronto, about 5.5 hours drive south. But how much fun did you have here? And would you be interested in having a second race run, around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve?
Oh yeah. I mean, as you can tell, it's probably one of the more entertaining F1 tracks on the circuit right now. And if it can make F1 entertaining, then it can easily make IndyCar entertaining. And I think it's a beautiful track. And it definitely, I think, if IndyCar can find a title sponsor, there's no better track in Canada for IndyCars, just because you do have these long straights where you can take advantage of the push to pass. You can really set up passes, and at the same time, it's still a very technically demanding track, and the best driver will almost invariably finish at the top. So I would say this should definitely be a place that IndyCar should consider for the future.
Well, there were some shots fired there across the nose of F1, but just quickly before we let you go, anyone you'd like to thank, Powerslide Motorsports and anyone else?
Yeah, just everyone at Powerslide. Always a collective effort on getting these setups in place. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite make the podium with it today. I probably deserved it, but thanks to Powerslide, and thanks to you guys for getting back out there and broadcasting. I know there was some doubt that we would have you for the rest of the season, but we're definitely very happy that you're here broadcasting the rest of these races.
Well, if they're as entertaining as this one was, we can't wait for the remaining 7 rounds. Andrew, thank you for joining us, and enjoy what will hopefully be a fun weekend.
Thanks, Arjuna.
All right, Sumal. So that was Andrew Kinsella. And, at this time, I think, Sumal, we can just quickly talk about the race. And there was a lot of things that we didn't even get to talk about that I wanted to. IndyCar's coming back tomorrow. Doubleheader weekend, Road America. I'm so excited, Sumal. It's also Spa 24 hours on iRacing. It's an awesome weekend for racing. And, it's just really feeling in the mood for racing right now.
Absolutely. And that's even forgetting the fact that Formula One's back next weekend as well, the Syrian Grand Prix too. So motorsport is all of a sudden making a quick return, and I just have a feeling that more and more people will be back to the sport right now. I mean, it's just such a fun time to be a part of racing at this stage. And as you rightly mentioned, Spa 24 hours, we're going to be commentating on that tomorrow as well. So I can't really wait for that. It's just literally GT3 paradise, that circuit.
Yeah, 55 GT3 cars making their way around the Belgian countryside for 24 hours. That's going to be fun. We're going to be on the broadcast together, Sumo. That's going to be, I believe, technically hours 15 through 19, if I'm doing my math right. Yeah, so we'll be taking over from the Radio Le Mans crew and then handing over to Radio Le Mans as well. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But we'll quickly just talk about IndyCar now because, Road America tomorrow, we saw a great race just a few weeks ago. Andrew Kinsella winning that one. What are your expectations? We talked briefly about, some of the issues drivers are having with the aero screen and heat. Road America may not be the hottest track and not the most physically demanding, but, a double header that leads into another double header for the real IndyCar drivers, that's going to be very tough.
That really is. And the one thing that actually I remember is Oliver Askew, after his major crash at Indianapolis last weekend, he said he was feeling a bit dizzy because there's not really a lot of airflow inside the car. So the drivers already are feeling a bit tough with all the circulation of air. When you couple that with the double header after another double header, it's just going to be so physically fatiguing for all these drivers. But again, they're proper, pristine athletes in the end, and they know exactly what they're doing. So in the end, I feel the racing is just going to be just as fun as it always is in IndyCar.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. And there's a lot of stuff that's been announced as well. For example, NASCAR has just announced that, they're going to be driving on the road course, the Cup Series, which is going to be really cool. I can't wait for that. Why don't we go ahead, though, and right now we'll bring up the remaining schedule for the season because there you can see we are just about at the halfway point right now with this race, and there's still a lot of entertaining stuff to go, including a second visit to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for both the oval and road courses.
That is the one thing I simply cannot wait for. And when you actually look at another couple of circuits over here, there is Barber Motorsports Park and Laguna Seca. Now, these two tracks are proper American sports car circuits, very tight and very technical and so much fun to drive as well. But we know for a fact that at Laguna Seca as well, the racing can be intense. So although these circuits, they may be so much fun to drive in, very tight and twisty and technical circuits, the racing over here is just going to be superb, especially considering the quality of the drivers that we have over here. Again, the Team Redline drivers coming in and just giving everyone a big show right here. But we know for a fact that in this particular series that we're having right now, the entertainment levels have almost always been at 11. It's been so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and speaking of entertainment levels, we've been treated to some very intriguing oval races so far.
Exactly.
We go to Iowa Speedway on next Friday, and you talk about the doubleheader that we're going to be leading up to a doubleheader at Iowa in the real world as well. I can't wait for that one, Sumo, because as far as I understand it as well, the latest update to the simulator has finally incorporated the correct aero package for that track. So, usually in iRacing, they run I guess stronger downforce package would be the word. So they have more downforce and, they can go a little bit faster. Now, it's going to be much more challenging for the drivers. And I think we're going to see a lot more passing because people are just going to be struggling all over the place. Sumo, sorry, we can't hear you right now. There's just technical issues. Sometimes we have this in the virtual booth. And there you go, Sumo. We can hear you now.
Yeah, perfect. So the thing with the Iowa Speedways, it's all about your mental strength and concentration because it's such a short speedway that it consistently, it always feels like you're cornering all the time. So how you can manage things out like your downforce levels over there and just keeping the patience in the end is going to be a critical factor. And we've seen, again, I think it was Richmond, if I'm not mistaken, the last time out at the short speedway. The racing was fantastic. So many cars going side by side with each other and lap traffic yet again becoming quite a prominent factor as well. So Iowa, I can't wait for that. It's going to be a fun one.
Indeed, and that's going to be in a week's time, so don't miss anything. But just a reminder, this is the IndyCar iRacing Series coverage. RaceBot TV's coverage of the IndyCar iRacing Series live on the iRacing Esports Network and RaceBot TV's Twitch. For myself, Arjuna Kankipati, I've been joined by Sumil Arora. As always, it's been a very fun one, and we hope to see you next Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, for an Iowa Speedway special. Thank you for joining us, and for both of us in the booth, thank you, and we will see you in a week's time.